Hey tankers, and welcome to the beaches of Normandy, where we are following poetry in the Tier 7 French wheeled vehicle, the EBR Hotchkiss. And this is an interesting map to play for a light tank. Perhaps one that might be a little bit difficult for a wheeled tank to do well on. It's probably more suited to the passive scouts. Those are the scouts that can sort of work the multiple ridge lines, but particularly those with bushes. You've got lots of rocks, you've got lots of hard cover. It is quite the dream for passive scouts. But even as active scouts, though, they can still work the ridge lines quite well. They basically drive up, get to the top, do a little turn, and in the case of poetry here, they've been able to spot 3 enemy vehicles just like that. Unfortunately, and this is something that players of the wheeled vehicles do need to keep in mind, often they will outpace the ability of their teammates to provide them with supporting fire. You might be able to rush up and zip over that ridge, you'll see the enemy, but often your teammates' guns are not really in position yet. Certainly even the self-propelled guns, of which there's 2 on the team at the moment, I mean, they also need time to sort of load their shells and dial in. So while it's great to be able to rush forward and see the enemy, you do need to sort of keep in the back of your mind, well, once I spot them, can we do anything about it? Having said that, like, the point of spotting the enemy isn't always necessarily to attract spotting damage or assist damage. It's also to sort of map enemy movements and perhaps confirm or deny whether the movements that your team are taking are correct or not. Certainly what we've seen poetry's team do is a very significant push towards the beach and the first shelf above the beach. So I guess it was quite important to confirm that the enemy team was doing something more or less similar, just to make sure that there wasn't a significant numerical disadvantage placed on this the 7-0 lines, as we see there's significant potential for. At the moment, poetry is really only supported by 1 tank destroyer and a Tier 7 medium, the P43 TER. Whereas we can already see that there's at least 2 enemy medium tanks, and the WZ-131, which is another light tank. It's presumably playing to the role of the light tank as well. So we can see that the sort of manoeuvres that poetry is making here is just come up the ridge, crest the ridge, try to take a quick peek over, but not stopping at all. In fact, trying to minimize those turns where you kind of become a static target, while cresting the ridge also becomes quite important. We tried to swing past and take a couple of cheeky shots at the Object 274A. Unfortunately, none of them have connected. We had been able to get some spotting damage with the P43, able to put a shell into the Object 274A. But otherwise, it's a fairly difficult situation here. The 274A has already decided to make a move against the friendly tank destroyer. So we're really looking for poetry to sort of either try to flank it or try to provide some support to that tank destroyer. Fortunately, the tank destroyer's been able to hold its own. It's been able to put a 440 hit point alpha bomb into the 274A, and poetry's been able to follow up with that as well, which is all very helpful. Still looking very vacant on this particular flank. So our WZ-120 is quite a reasonable gun. They've got a bit of communication going. They each know what the other needs or wants. They're going to try and hunt down the SPG that's in that you usually find around A0, and of course it's usually backed up by a tank destroyer of some description as well. So here we are. We've been able to find the GW Panther. We've been able to dig out the Super Hellcat. He's got the high explosive shells loaded, which are one of the signature bits of weaponry on the French wheeled vehicles. Since version 1.13, they have by and large had their penetration capped at 75 millimeters, but that hasn't. I don't believe that's affected the EBR Hotchkiss. I think its penetration was always 75 millimeters. So he's been able to use that to excellent effect to shut down both the Granatenwerfer Panther and the Super Hellcat. So this has given them substantial control of pretty well the right side of the map from grid 7 to grid 0. A swing and a miss from the enemy Su-130 PM, as I like to call it, the after lunch tank, 1:30 PM. This puts the enemy team in a bit of a dangerous position. They now only have one self-propelled gun, providing that indirect fire support. They still have two medium tanks, so they can sort of navigate around the battlefield. But Poetry is exhibiting some very good role play of EBR Hotchkiss, where Poetry is constantly on the move, constantly changing the firing angles, and this makes it, once the map sort of opens up like this, particularly with shorter view range vehicles like heavy tanks, it makes them very difficult to know, well, okay, where do I position, where do I point? Because if the angle of incoming fire is constantly changing, well, you never really know where it is that you need to set up. At the moment, Poetry is mindful of the VZ-44-1. That's the Tier 7 Czech heavy tank that's coming up off the beach, approaching the cap circle. That front is reasonably well covered, though. We do have the other VZ-44, the friendly VZ-44. That presumably that is what Poetry's target is trying to reach for at the moment. So he's able to put at least one shot into the VZ. Can he make it another? Yes, he can. Very neat shot to the cupola. Unfortunately, the friendly VZ-44 has been knocked out on this particular occasion, but that's all right. He still has the support of a TS5 that could quite easily round the corner and make a meal of the Tier 7 Czech heavy. Although he has, Poetry has spotted the Bisonte C45. That's the premium Tier 8 Italian heavy tank, and that's in a bit of a position to intercept the TS5 should it cross. We've also managed to relocate the AMX M49. That's the Tier 8 French premium heavy tank, and reconfirmed the location of Ferdinand at the back line as well. This is where the constant change of firing angle is super helpful for Poetry's game right now, because Poetry has been able to catch that Bisonte at a very oblique armor facing, where it can't use its amazing hull down ability to deflect pretty much anything it sees at tier. Having said that, this is a very tight game. They are roughly equal on hit points, and they are equal on remaining tanks. Whether it's an advantage or not is kind of hard to tell, but Poetry's team does have two self-propelled guns. So I guess that means just that little bit extra indirect fire capability, provided that Poetry's team can continue spotting for targets, and I guess that is exactly what the role, task and function of Poetry is in this particular situation. You can see how much map control they have exerted, however, on the fact that now Poetry is in their base, literally in their base, capping their base, but we do know that the base is also being anchored by the Tier 8 German tank destroyer, the Ferdinand. Bit of a swing and a miss by Poetry there, but we need to stop this tank from turning around and causing him problems. So tracking shots are always good for that. A couple of penetrating hits on the Ferdinand. Looks like there was supporting fire coming in as well. He's now got it down to a one shot. Can he make it? Yes, he does. Shuts down the Ferdinand for his third kill of the game. scores, they are slightly lower. They're at a 1-gun disadvantage, perhaps a slight hit point disadvantage. So we'll have to see how they go. We're able to light up the enemy self-propelled gun and hopefully deny them that advantage of indirect fire support. We know that the friendly Lorraine 155 has already skedaddled for the B0 line, so they have just done a complete cross map, which is something you have to be quite careful of with the French self-propelled guns. They do tend to be quite mobile. The WZ-120 has already taken the initiative to start capping, and so is the enemy team as well, which means they can either be doing one of two things. They can either be moving on to cap themselves, or they can be trying to rush back to reset. In this situation, they do have the weight of numbers near the cap circle. They appear to have their thick green line is progressing a little bit further, so they want to press that advantage and get tanks on target. Let's see, the French heavy tank is coming back. Is Poetry going to reveal themselves? Well, they're able to knock that AMX out and claim 5 kills for this game. So that's a victory to Poetry's team. Quite a close game there. So let's take a look at the results and see how everyone did. So a very well-deserved Ace Mastery badge for Poetry of the Daddy Clan in the Tier 7 French Light Vehicle EBR Hotchkiss. He's also picked up a couple of Epic and Battle Heroes medals here. We've had Orlik's medal for accounting for at least 2 enemy tanks or tank destroyers while operating a light tank. And of course Pascucci's medal for destroying both of the enemy SPGs in that battle. Looking at some of these badges of merit, we have the Spotter badge for spotting at least 1,000 hit points of damage, which with 1,400 is certainly cleared with interest. Bruiser for causing damage to enemy crews and modules, which becomes particularly important when you're trying to use the mobility of the Hotchkiss against slightly less agile targets, particularly with shutting down tracks and that sort of thing. The Fighter medal for accounting for at least 4 kills on the enemy team, which Poetry's been able to get the upper limit of that at 5. One more kill and Poetry would have had a Top Gun medal for their efforts. And of course the Fire for Effect medal for causing more hit points than the damage of your vehicle, which over 2,100 hit points of damage inflicted on the enemy team. It's been quite a destructive game for Poetry this time around. Looking at the team scores, we've had an excellent showing here from the bottom-tiered vehicles, despite being a Tier 7 and 8 matchup, with Poetry taking a top place by a significant margin, followed up by the P43 that was very supportive of Poetry, particularly in the early game, the VZ44-1, and of course the WZ120 that was quite instrumental earlier in the game in assisting Poetry to really push and exert that map control through the right-hand side of the map. Special mention, of course, to Raptor XXX of the Zombie Clan for their efforts in the Tier 8 Premium French Heavy Tank AMX M4 MLE49. And looking at the detailed report, looks like there was a personal mission completed along the line, which was certainly helped matters. There's a few consumables used in this game, which has sort of affected the income, but overall, taking the personal mission out of the equation, 20,000 credit profit, which you certainly have to be happy about that in a Tier 7 game. And if you've got a game that you're happy with and you'd like to share it with the community, please give us a shout over Discord or any of the links below, and we'll do our best to sort you out. In the meantime, take care out there.